Welcome to Titan HST's Business Continuity Today, hosted by Todd De Voe, where planning meets reality.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this fine world. And today, well, we're going to do a little bit different here on Business Continuity Today. You know, we're going to look at the year in review and stuff that's really impacted us here as in the worldwide here, not just here in the United States, but the disasters that struck. And it's both political and natural and human-made, human-caused disasters, if you want to take a look at it that way, that we can take a look at for the year in review. 2022 had some positive and negatives, and say which was good specifically. We came together a little bit, after COVID, and I think we're kind of still in the middle of post-COVID, I suppose, or have we started post-COVID? But I think that's a positive. But on the other side of it, we had an issue still with the economy, kind of staggering. Not quite at recession, but maybe it kind of feels like we're there. Anyway, before we move on to things that maybe happened in 2023, let's take a look at some of the disasters that we faced worldwide and some of the costly ones here. So the top disasters of 2022 is the war in Ukraine. We've all been watching that going on, and that's one of the political ones I'm talking about here. But it's not just the war between two nations. Let's take a look at what this meant for the displacement of refugees, but also the businesses that were impacted by the war here, globally. I have some friends who live in the Ukraine, who are working over there, that started businesses over there. I have some people who do business here in the United States, and they have company assets that were in the Ukraine, and how that impacted them. And so that was one of the big things here that occurred business-wise with the war in Ukraine. We had to adjust to that. That also included the possibility of some hunger issues worldwide. What I mean by this is the Russians were holding on to hundreds of thousands of tons of wheat at the port. And there was a negotiation between the UN, the United States, Russia, to allow that grain to be transported. And realistically, that was impacting things that were happening in Africa and in Asia, not so much of Europe or the United States. But the Ukraine is one of the breadbaskets of the world. So the war in Ukraine also had impacts specifically on food distribution across the globe, which brings us to our next one. It was the global hunger crisis, right? There's been famine in some areas due to weather issues, climate change, where production of wheat and grains were down, and we were close to what they call a global famine, meaning that the majority of people around the globe were having food issues. And although it wasn't impacting the Western United States or the West so much, especially here in the United States, the idea of famine in other parts of the world could really impact how things occur here in the United States. So we truly are a global world. It's kind of redundant, a global economy. Well, we can't say much more than about the Afghan crisis. Things are happening there still after the 20-year war. But also there was a large earthquake that occurred over there, and there's food issues and food insecurities that are happening in Afghanistan as well. And we still have, looking at the Syrian refugee crisis, the war is creating refugees still to this day, and the upheaval is not over. So people are coming over they're getting to Greece, and then try to get into to Europe still. And this refugee crisis is a serious issue, and this is something that we can't ignore. And again, this is something where war is impacting people's movement. And then we come into our Hurricane Ian, and we're still in the recovery process of that. And then we're looking at the Yemen and the chronic emergency that is occurring over there. Those are some of them. But let's get into what does that mean, right? As I've said before, when we take a look at disasters, we take a look at it in two ways. We look at the human impact of the disaster, which means, right, how is it impacting the humanitarian issues, the social crisis of the disaster. And then on the other side of it, we have the economic impact of the disaster. And when we measure disaster size, right, we're looking not just at the amount of people who have been impacted, but also the price of it. Right now, the Northeast was also just starting to recover from a large snowstorm that occurred. Well, realistically, most of the United States, except for California, was dealing with the freeze that came in from the north, from Alaska, basically. You see videos of people in Seattle or in Washington area where it's just completely iced over, where they can't drive, they can't even walk. Issues like that. And then you have over in Buffalo, New York, where there is an entire town that's just sheeted with ice, and all over the homes are covered with ice. And these are serious issues. And Buffalo had 52 people so far as this morning goes, that were reported dead due to this weather. Now, you might ask, okay, for me, Buffalo is a little bit close to heart. That's where I'm from originally, and I still have family over in that area, so I'm paying attention to that storm obviously pretty closely. But also we have businesses that aren't able to function specifically in there. So again, we're looking at what is the economic impact of this snowstorm that has occurred across. We haven't really received those information as of yet. Well, we're looking at droughts and floods and storms and hurricanes, and amongst the most costly natural disasters of 2022. We're looking at Hurricane Ian with $100 billion in costs. It was a Category 4 hurricane that caused widespread damage across Cuba and the southwest United States. And over 7 days in September, they killed 150 people and made over 40,000 people homeless. Right. Looking at the next one here, the European drought, $20 billion. So the drought in the Western United States is costing billions of dollars as well in agricultural issues. Water is becoming a serious concern worldwide. And what does that mean? And so billions of dollars are being spent and being lost on that. And it's also caused around 20,000 deaths with that. Flooding in China, this is going to be an interesting kind of story here. There's $12.3 billion in the flooding in China in June, right? This heaviest rainfall since 1961, and it's brought floods and landslides and evacuations of hundreds of thousands of people. And then on the other side of it, there's a drought in China, which cost $8.4 billion as well. Australia got hit with floods, costing $7.5 billion from February through March. And this is, again, displacing 60,000 people and it killed 27 people. And, if you think about this, again, how is this impacting what you do as a global economy, as a global world, when we're taking a look at things that are happening? Pakistan, $5.6 billion due to floods. 1,700 people displaced, and I'm sorry, 1,700 people killed and displaced 7 million people in Pakistan. Pakistan, again, is part of the global economy, especially when you're looking at medical instruments and in the medical business. And so again, how is that impacting what we're doing with the supply chain issues that we're seeing across the world during this time? Another storm that occurred in the Netherlands, $4.3 billion worth of damage, is that impacted Germany, Belgium, Ireland, Netherlands, Poland, UK. 7 people were killed during that storm, but impacting those areas, $4.3 billion. We go back down to the drought in Brazil, $4 billion in the drought in Brazil, another place that has a lot of issues with your sugar production and shipping issues that are coming out of Brazil. Again, all these things are impacting supply chain. Hurricane Fiona, $3 billion right there. 25 people were killed and 13,000 people are homeless, impacting the Caribbean and Canada and some areas. And then we have also South Africa was hit with some serious floods with $3 billion in damage. You know, at the end of the day, we need to be paying attention to everything that is occurring globally, not just in our little small area where our businesses are. All of these disasters that occurred globally impacted the supply chain, impacted the ability for you to do business here in the United States, if you're listening in the United States, or in other parts of the country or the world. This is why we're so connected. This is why business continuity professionals, it's critical for you to lean forward, look at what's going on globally. How does that impact you, and how can you get in front of these issues? You know, on the other side of it too is, how is this impacting your business and the people that work for you? Hundreds of thousands of people over the last year have been displaced due to, well, millions due to war, hundreds of thousands due to storms. And how does that impact how you are able to do your job? And that's what business continuity is truly about. I hope everybody has a wonderful and prosperous new year. Let's keep all those in the last year that have been displaced or lost their lives in our thoughts and prayers during this time of year, as we sit back and reflect on how we can be a better me, better you, and a better us. Until next time, everybody, please stay safe and stay hydrated.